Just when you were talking earlier about the fact that candidates hadn't had any connection with your team up until the point of assessment, do you have any stats on the drop-off rate or the attendance to those assessments of those people that automated, booked themselves in versus those who were booked in by the team?
Yeah, I mean, we get high dropout anyway, to be fair with you, because obviously anybody here who works in volume, you do get that. To be fair, it was the same as anybody that would have spoken.
So
it was
there
like
was
there's
no difference.
Exactly, you're probably talking 2 or 3%, which in terms of metrics, when you're dealing with thousands, isn't really a big deal. But yeah, pretty much the same.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll ask one. Jess, I don't really know you that well, but I'm hoping to.
Great.
What's on your roadmap this year around technology? What are you looking at from a tech perspective?
Goodness. So when I joined McCann 8 months ago, we were running the recruitment for 2,000 people out of a spreadsheet.
Brilliant.
So I don't know if that gives anybody in the audience some of PTSD flashbacks, but that's where we were at. We've implemented a couple of things. It's also tough because we're a global business, so there's this kind of looming pressure of making sure we conform with whatever global needs us to do, kind of contractual obligation-wise, and then also just to make sure that we're consistently producing the same data. So we've kind of done a kind of bottom-up and a top-down approach. We're implementing a whole new global ATS, which is a process that's going to take a couple of months. In the business as large as we are, about 13,000 people will be touching this piece of software in some way. And then we're also kind of going from the ground up in small kind of incremental changes to our process. So that's anything from implementing You Can Book Me so that the team can kind of self-manage their own interviews rather than having to do that horrible back and forth for a week to try and get a candidate in for one phone screen that doesn't end up working because something has to move. Candidates can kind of self-manage their own interview process, which is really helpful for us because a huge amount of our admin time needs to be spent on our ATS right now because it's a legacy system. Additional to that, we're also looking at better ways to kind of screen graduate level candidates, and that's going to be simple things just like video screening, chatbots as well. We're looking into them at the moment. And I think the interesting part about working at a kind of large business like McCann is that you're recruiting volume for some roles, but you're also recruiting across lots and lots of different types of roles. So we're still doing like executive level recruitment where part of the technology we need to implement there is just better ways of sharing information with them, whether that be some kind of static web page they can log into with a password and see what to expect when they come on for the day, how we integrate better with the HR team, which again is very large and sprawling, how do we get that data we have from the recruitment process so that onboarding is very smooth, and we also have a very large responsibility over pre-boarding. So we're implementing some technology around pre-boarding too that kind of automates parts of the process, that sends out emails to the team to ask them to add the new staff member on LinkedIn, that asks them to invite them out for dinner, that sends out automated emails to the candidate to remind them about things, and just kind of make the process a little bit less administrative on our end.
Excellent.
So there's lots, basically.
Loads.
Spreadsheet to 1,000 in 10 months.
That's pretty impressive. So that's the next question. We've got a question, hey, from the audience. Jeffrey, any tips on getting tech-phobic hiring managers on board?
Yes. Show them the money. I mean, they think at the end of the day, I think they think money-wise how it can impact the business. I think the main thing is showing them the benefits of using the technology and how much money it can actually truly save them, and just get them immersed into it. So when I started with FDM 3 years ago, first thing I implemented was gamification in our assessment center, and I actually invited the directors in when I pitched it, and I actually had them do the games. And I actually had the company we use is Arctic Shores. I had them set it at the highest probability, like the hardest test they can actually have, and had them just actually do the game. And they were really engaged with it. They enjoyed it. And when I showed them how horrible the results were, they were a little shocked. So I had a little fun with them, but it's just, I think, a matter of engaging with them. But then at the end of the day, you just need to show them the costs and how it will save them money, and then how we can actually use that money and divert it elsewhere within the business.
And what are the kind of typical fears from those tech-phobic managers that you faced?
I think the fears is, will we end up rejecting the wrong candidates? at the end of the day. I think depending on any tech that you actually implement, is that impact. We're really big on diversity. Is there an adverse impact in that? And I think when you're looking at different tech partners to work with, is challenging them on that, actually, and saying, have you done any reporting? Is there any adverse impact on any sort of diversity that's out there?
Okay, excellent. Okay, so 2 more questions. Talent pooling. I'm thinking Richard for this.
You
So
can.
does anyone feel they talent pool really well through innovative tech? If yes, give our secrets. But I think you've done some around talent pooling, talent pipelining.
Yeah,
right?
so we're not fully there yet, but we've certainly utilised Candidate ID to support some of our talent pooling activity, and that's something that we're starting to look at developing as a long-term strategy. So for us, it's about changing it from talent pool to talent pipeline, and actually getting to a point where we've got an engaged database that we can spend our time talking to the right people at the right time. So for me, Candidate ID, by automating that content strategy and being able to index people's consumption of that, means that I can power my recruiters to be talking to people when they're ready to talk to us about a job, rather than wasting our time talking to people that aren't actually at the point of being ready to have a conversation about a vacancy.
Okay, excellent. Do you fancy that bottom one, Katrina? I think that one's an interesting question.
Do the tech one.
You want to do the tech one? Okay,
I got a
cool.
good tech one as
So
well.
what's the best technology you've seen to assist with hiring tech talent?
I'm going to be obnoxious and say your brain. Who actually asked the question so I can aim my explanation at it?
It says anonymous for a reason.
No, I'm not. I just speak. So I've heard who asked the tech question. I'm not going to insult you. I just want to know who I'm answering. No.
There at the back.
Oh, Ellie. Well, Ellie knows then. Seeing she did a brilliant Disrupt HR presentation on the developers of the cats of your organisation. It's about how you use the technology, not just to find the people, but to find the human behind, whatever it is they've put out there. So you do your research. So when you make contact with these people, you have done your research. So I could say amazing hiring is absolutely brilliant for finding new technical people, but that doesn't mean they'll reply. So you need to use this and your curiosity to dig in and find extra information and use that to get their attention. So to me, it's not, specifically for that, it's not about the tool. It's about how you use it and digging in and digging in. So they are bombarded. So there's something like, particularly developers, there's something like 5 job vacancies per developer here in London, to give you an idea. So if you think about how irritating the GDPR emails were, that's the only time we will ever feel what a developer feels like every single day from our emails. So just think of that when you're sending it, and that will help as well. So a bit of an obnoxious answer, but seeing it's Ellie, who's my mate, she can cope with me.
Actually, I have another one. We implemented something last year. It's about using tech to job offer tech. And I'm going to fill you in because I think we're the only company that did it. So I'm going to probably bite myself later. But we use augmented reality job offers. And they're actually really cheap to do. I delivered it across the UK for less than £3,000. And you can go online to find any company. If you've ever gotten those annoying e-video invites to a wedding, we use that same technology and we actually turned them into job offers. And instead of sending out, when you job offer a candidate and you send it to HR and they type up this very formal corporate letter that's every single person across the country gets, we sent them this card asking them to download this app. Here's your job offer. And it was augmented reality, and it was a video of our CEO welcoming them into the business, and we're excited to have them and stuff. So again, it's something different. And for us in graduate recruitment, having that job offer, they go back on campus, everyone's reading, oh, I got a job offer from this company. They show a piece of paper. They're like, oh, check out this on my phone. I got this augmented reality. And it's kind of similar to Pokemon, but very inexpensive to implement and something different.
Excellent. They didn't have to wander around the university campus looking for their job offer.
They didn't have to shoot the Pokemon or anything like that. But.
Anybody can answer this, but do you have any advice on how to reduce the number of dropouts on applications?
Thought Ben would be good for this, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Does that mean from application through the process, getting them to start?
Let's assume it's not finishing an application process.
Yeah, I mean, so can I kind of combine the top 2 questions a little bit?
You can.
So the reason why, one will lead into the other. So as I kind of said during my ramble, I inherited iGrasp, which is like a Ford Fiesta XR2i. It's just an absolute shocker. And one of the quickest wins that we did was just re-engineer the application process. And once we did that, because we weren't asking for people's national insurance numbers, because we weren't asking somebody employing for a warehouse sorter to illustrate good project management skills, guess what? People were kind of applying. So I think for me, to reduce the number of dropouts, you really have to go back to the application process and yet again look at it through the eyes of the candidate. I don't really buy into this whole, but if it's a short application process, they're not really buying into your brand. Bollocks, if I'm honest with you. A lot of, and working for Yodel's really opened my eyes. So when we were doing the EVP and the SEVP for self-employed people, don't get me wrong, people in IT would say, I want to work with code and tech and all the rest of them. A lot of our ops people just want to get paid on time because they've got families to feed. They really don't care about the strategic journey of this or that and the other. So for me, I think it's engineering an application process whereby you make people sticky. You're always going to get dropouts because that's recruitment, and since I started in 2005 we had dropouts then, and I think you'll always have them, but try and make your application process as sticky as possible and try and shut the possible doors where people will kind of leave, if that makes sense.
And I think with tech now, you can see where they're dropping off. So you should be able to find out what is causing people to say, sod this, it's too complicated, it's irritating, you're asking for too much.
Another thing that I will say is if anybody does have quite a legacy ATS that needs a little bit of work, just have a really honest conversation with your vendor account manager. You're paying a fair few quid a month, probably, and they probably don't want to lose you as a customer. So just have a really honest and open conversations, because I'm really bored of hearing recruiters saying, meh, I've got success factors, meh, I've got this, but you implemented it and you bought it. So let's not blame the tools, let's maybe admit that our processes maybe aren't right before we, attack the tech.
I do have one point on that though. I used to feel the same way. When I was in charge of buying the ATS, I used to be like, well, when I come in, I'll just replace it with whatever I want and then it'll be great. Or like, I'll just tweak it however I want and it'll be great. And then I'm not going to be one of those recruiters that comes in and complains because the ATS that I have is crap. And then I joined a global company where I only have 10% of the slice of pie of decision making. And it doesn't matter whether the other 90% are geniuses or the other 90% have never worked with Lever, which is the best ATS of all time. But all of a sudden, I now have to deal with something that I'm not particularly happy with, and I don't think is the right solution. So it doesn't become me saying, well, I just call my account manager and fix the problem. I think it is a different mindset then, which is, yes, I don't agree that, sitting on your hands and saying, it's the ATS's fault, there's nothing I can do about it, I hate it, that's why our dropouts are so bad. But I do think there are things you can do to mitigate a bad ATS, right? And there are other kind of tools that you can use and ways that you can make the process a little bit easier. So at McCann, we can't change our application process. And our application process is one of those shocking, MS-DOS looking 15-page, upload your CV and then also type your whole CV in case you haven't got enough information, kind of jobs. And that is a nightmare. And we see a huge amount of dropout when we ask people to go through that application page. So what we've had to do is find other ways to make it work. Also, if you upload your application through to our ATS, through our website, you get one email automated that's meant to be for the whole globe that I don't get to control that says, thank you for your application. Goodbye. And then that's it. You disappear into the ether. So what we started to do is we developed some systems that meant there was a bit of automation in our inbox. So when we got an application come through from people, it sent an automated email with all the details. Thanks for the application. This is how you get in touch with us. This is how long it takes. Yada, yada, yada. So that helps with the people have made the effort to go through this excruciating application process, but how do we get people to go through this application process? So we started figuring out ways that we could get people to apply through LinkedIn and then automate the upload process, or get people to apply through the inbox rather than through the ATS. And we actually found out we can bulk upload them if we put them in a spreadsheet. So there are ways to do it. And I think that kind of clever thinking about how you make bad technology less bad, and it will never be good, is really helpful, but you should still loudly blame the ATS. No. I'm going to fight Ben on stage.
Are you okay, hon?
Yeah, come on, let's move on. So,
I will answer that at some point,
Which one? The middle one? Okay, let's do it now.
No, because you haven't said anything, Richard.
I didn't.
Which question do you want me to, which question do you want me to
Richard,
answer?
you answer what has been the biggest tech game changer for recruitment, for you personally in your businesses, and how much did it improve your process?
Okay, so again, we're not fully live with it, but we've piloted it and we're about to go live. And it's a tool called Pocket Recruiter, which has enabled us to automate our sourcing activity. I have a central sourcing function that's responsible for supporting our recruiters on going out and proactively finding and engaging candidates. A lot of their time is spent on actually building the search string, revisiting the search string, re-clarifying the need, etc., etc. What Pocket Recruiter enables us to do is take away that pain and also capability, because Pocket Recruiter is building that search by reading the job spec as if it was a recruiter and going out and finding the candidates, bringing them back ranked and matched to the requirements. So again, what I'm empowering my sourcing team to do is spend time talking to relevant candidates rather than spending time trying to find candidates. During the pilot, we saw, I can't remember the numbers, but we saw a significant increase in reduction in the time it takes us to source, because we were powering that sourcing activity through the technology, and a better CV to interview ratio. So we were getting more candidates into interview with the hiring managers because we were matching better relevant candidates through the channels we already had access to, but we were powering those channels to be more effective, if that makes sense. So for us, in a function that is central to part of what my team is responsible for doing, it's been a massive game changer, and it will continue to do so, because the machine learning element of that tool will mean that it will get better and better as we integrate it into our ATS, because it will start to understand what good looks like, and will therefore be faster and more efficient at finding those relevant candidates.
Yeah, excellent. Anybody else want to add to that in terms of a bit of tech that's changed their world in the last 12 months? Katrina looks like she wants to say something.
I'm going to answer that, but
It
hasn't technically changed my world. But you mentioned onboarding, and onboarder, E-N-B-O-A-R-D-E-R. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If you have trouble onboarding people, do what Jess said, using onboarder. Yeah, sorry. Little plug for them. Anyway.
As you've got the microphone, do you want to answer the question about whether recruiting is easier or harder than it was 5 years ago?
Yeah, can we just go 10 years ago and save me some effort? Yeah. Yes? Because, you know, the little candidates...
Harder.
Sorry?
Easier or harder?
Harder. Harder. Because the little candidates are paying you all back, right? So you've heard of candidate ghosting, and I swear if I see one more recruiter complain about candidate ghosting, we, for 10 years, have been ghosting candidates. So they apply into the black hole with their automated email. We don't respond to them. We don't respond to them after they interview. Do an X-ray search of Glassdoor interviews for never heard back, for example. And actually going back to the hiring managers, showing them how they treat candidates ends up on the review sites. So the power has shifted, because we now have more jobs than there are candidates. They can go and look at our reviews, they can look on social media. Never heard back interview into Twitter will horrify you. I want a job into Twitter will also horrify you. So they're talking about us, and they're looking at you, they're looking at your company, and they're deciding long before they respond to you whether they will or they won't. So that's why it's harder. The noise level's harder. So it doesn't mean that you can't get through it, but it's just really, really, really noisy, and they're paying us back for all of the mistreatment that we've given them. So I do think it's harder.
I actually read a report recently, I think it was produced by Prospects, and they were looking at the aging population in the UK. And if you look back several years ago, there was a huger population, people were having more kids, and that actual population is getting smaller and smaller. And if you look at the early talent going through their GCSEs and going into university, that pool is getting smaller and smaller. So I think we're seeing that now today, that candidate pool, all of us in this room are all looking for the same people and competing against each other. But it's just getting smaller and smaller for us, particularly in the UK population.
And do you think we can get better at kind of growing our own talent? Because we're always very focused on having to hire the person who's ready to do the job today, rather than the person who might be ready within 3 months or so.
Well, actually, that's one thing with FDM we're quite good at, and my Capita, my competitor here, does the same thing. But it's about growing that talent. We have a training academy where we'll hire somebody, train them through our academy before we deploy them out to work for our clients. So we have that capability of nurturing and growing our own talent, taking people from any sort of degree background or any background actually, and training them how to be developers, as long as they have that basic ability, that analytical thinking. So we're able to kind of grow that talent differently, and actually providing a different talent out to the market, having somebody that has maybe studied English or philosophy at university, and now they're a software developer in Java, puts a different perspective on that as well.
And also from a retention point of view as well, for cross-training, if you're an enterprise, have a look at a tool called ProFinder, which will help you map, particularly as your employees grow and gain more skills, across all of the projects that you've got going on, and there could be people that you could be pulling in from all around the organisation. Amazing tool. So.
Absolutely. I think to your point about graduate schemes and development schemes like that, absolutely. But sometimes that talent's already in your business doing a different job. Yeah. Like Ben may have a driver who could be an amazing developer, so at Yodel. But unless you actually look at those people in the first place and assess that, you're sometimes missing a massive pool.
Well, my recruiter last year, based up in Leeds, she had an English degree, fell in love with development because she's been selling it to candidates for the last year, and now she's a developer at Sky.
Exactly. So, top one, I like this one. When shopping for new tech, what are your 3 identifiers to let you know you're looking at a decent piece of technology? Yep.
So obviously, I've bought a fair bit of over the kind of past 3 years, but obviously there are kind of things, obviously you look at things like endorsements, roadmaps, who else is using it. But for me, obviously this isn't a stab at any vendor before I get water bottles thrown at me, but it's a lovely feeling when a vendor, it could be anything, it could be an ATS, it could be Pocket, it could be whatever, come into the office and rather than just saying, launching into a PowerPoint presentation, they just ask the question, how can we help? What are your problems? Look, I know you're an ATS, I know you're an automated sourcing tool or whatever, but just show a little bit of empathy. And I think as well, vendor suppliers that truly get internal politics, for example, marketing, IT, procurement, having something signed off by the financial controller in our Polish office or whatever it is, because it is painful getting things over the line. So yeah, just a little bit of empathy of some of the kind of the internal stuff that we get. I think I'd say that.
The biggest thing has got to be how they demonstrate that they're solving your problem, right? Because it's got to be about implementing tech to solve a problem, not just to implement tech for tech's sake. And that piece around understanding the governance and the process that you have to go through in a big corporate organisation like a Capita is actually, given that we're talking to quite young organisations in terms of a lot of them are tech startups, they're not necessarily experienced in working with that kind of corporate environment. So finding the ones that actually understand and can work with that process, I think is massively important because it is a long process to get through an organisation like ourselves.
I think for me, understanding what the problem is before you even start looking for a vendor is really important as well. Because often, for most problems, there's hundreds of vendors that you potentially could go and talk to, but they aren't all going to be right by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, listen to peers, talk to people like me, that's what I do for a living. I'm completely vendor agnostic, so come to me, ask the question, and I'll point you in the right direction. Listen to what's worked for other people and take some credibility and some interest in what others are doing first before you just go out and tell the world you're looking for an ATS or an assessment solution or whatever it might be. But do your research first and narrow down. But ask awkward questions, be challenging. Ultimately, they want to sell the product to you, but don't give them an easy ride. Make sure you do challenge and make sure they are absolutely right for you. Because going back to Ben's point about once you decide to implement something like an ATS, you've made that decision to do that. If it's the wrong solution that you've gone for, you made that decision in the end. So make sure you take as much information as you can as possible before saying, yep, I'm going with that particular solution. So, is that an easy one? Will the corporate website soon be a thing of the past for recruitment? Is that a yes, no?
I'd question why. I mean, fundamentally, to me, it's the hub of where you should be driving your candidate traffic to. So I think the corporate website will change and will be different to what it is today and needs to be much more of a personalised journey for a candidate but it's still got a massive part to play in the process, I would say.
Can I ask the panel a question? When will job descriptions copy and pasted into job adverts become a thing of the past? Because they...
So, because it leads into what you're about to say, apparently 97% or so of job seekers actually land on your job description on your career site first, which if any of you are in employer branding is probably quite horrific because you spend all this time making these beautiful videos and all this stuff that they don't see because they land on the copy and paste job description rather than the job advertisement first. So
It's true. Well, because most people, using Ben as an example again, don't go to the Yodel site because they're desperate to work for Yodel. They've typed somewhere else, I want a job as a van driver. They've found an advert for a van driver that's then taken to the ad for a van driver on the Yodel website.
Yeah.
But career sites, I think, can improve massively. That personalisation bit is huge. I think not just a landing page for every job, but actually something when candidates hit a page, it already knows stuff about them. So it serves up the right content in the right kind of way that will appeal to that individual.
I also think that there are some businesses that are doing a lot to make their careers page not necessarily a destination, because I think that probably is too aspirational, but a useful place to be that isn't just like a propaganda tool or a kind of really boring job description portal. There's something else that they can be. And I think, on the kind of more corporate end, Unilever is very good at giving like CV advice and interview advice and just general kind of, if you're looking for a job in this kind of area, we can help you, whether or not it's at Unilever, but here you are, so you might as well apply. I think that also is a really interesting kind of thing to think about. And I think startups kind of half do this to some degree. Some do it better than others, but just giving general advice to devs, like this is the kind of stack we work with. This is, if you're interested in jobs in this area, we suggest you read this Medium post, and it kind of takes you down this rabbit hole. And those kinds of things I think are more useful than almost anything else, because what you tend to remember when you're on a job hunt is pages that served you something that wasn't the same as everyone else. And there have been lots of times in my career that people have kind of referred to those kinds of job sites that say like, this is a good way to write your CV, or this is the best way to put yourself forward for an interview. And I think the other thing is if you're still using job descriptions as your job ad, then you are way behind the people that are doing a really good job of it. And I know it's tough because my team still has hiring managers come to us and say, oh, we don't need to brief you, we've emailed you through a job description, that's everything you guys should need. But ultimately there's nothing less engaging and more wrong most of the time than a job description, and I refuse to use them as job ads.
Just on that, if you have a look at Tenable Careers, so my co-host of the Social Recruiting Show, Audra Knight, does those, and you'll find if you click a link for a job, you land on a landing page which has a video, and then it suggests other jobs, and it's all easy apply. I mean, it's just amazing. So have a look at Tenable Careers if you're looking for some inspiration on that. And agree with the whole no job description thing. I mean, you should be going in and having a proper intake strategy session with your hiring managers and finding out what problem the person is coming in to solve. And while you're in there, hopefully grabbing some video of them talking about it.
Exactly.
So.
I was just going to say, and that is a really, really valid point, because a lot of recruiters complain that, we just get treated like transactional kind of people. Well, what do you expect if you just comply? For me, the kind of, briefing meeting, kick-off meeting, whatever language you're using these days, I think that's a really important bit of the process, because if you get that wrong, you lose the rapport, you lose the relationship. And guess what? It hasn't changed since I was a recruitment consultant back in 2005. I think sometimes, tech's really, really good, automated sourcing, all the rest of it, but sometimes just stick to the basics. Recruitment is recruitment, and I don't think that'll change, so, yeah.
Agreed.
I actually think that intake strategy session is the most important thing of the whole thing.
Yeah. Just one quick thing on job descriptions, and this is a nice to have piece of tech, but it's something that I've used in the past and really liked. It's a tool called Textio, and it's basically like a neutralizer that you can put a job description or a job ad that you've written in, and it kind of removes any weird kind of specific language and make sure that things aren't gender specific, but also just makes it a little bit more colloquial and conversational. I find that really helpful because it is, I think, sometimes easy as a recruiter and also as a hiring manager or as anyone in business to write in a way that's just too specific, and candidates kind of bulk out a little bit if they're trying to read it in a conversational way. And it's been really good at kind of removing our team from that headspace and helping them write ads that are in the tone of voice people really want to read them in. But it's definitely a nice to have.
And what they'd search for.
And it's also what they search for. So it's like it informs SEO and those kinds of things as well, which is really helpful. But I just find it really good at like nagging you when you've got repetitive language and making sure you're using the right pronouns and making sure people are going to actually be engaged with the text you're putting out there, because most of the time it's the primary thing people interact with up until their first on-site interview, really. Most people constantly refer back to that. And when you think that people spend 16 hours preparing for an interview in total generally, up to an offer stage, about 7 or 8 hours of that time, of their own private time, is going to be reading that job description and reading what's on your careers page.
And then we don't give them interview feedback.
Good deal, that.
16 hours and like £200, I think, as well. It's like the average.
Interviewing, and we don't give them feedback.
We actually will. On that, we do.
So do we.
No. As far as my team, when candidates get to the assessment center stage, they're not allowed to go on an email and reject a candidate. Right. Every single candidate gets a phone call. They're given feedback how they can improve in the future going forward as they search for careers.
Excellent. So on that very positive note about how amazing we all are as recruiters,